I'm 71 years old, and last Tuesday I deleted my daughter's number from my phone. Not because I stopped loving her. A mother doesn't wake up one morning and decide she no longer loves her child. I deleted it because every time her name lit up my screen, I felt that familiar tightening in my chest. Not anger, not even frustration, just the quiet exhaustion of having to defend a life I've already made peace with. There's something people don't like to admit out loud. It doesn't fit neatly into greeting cards or romantic comedies. Sometimes the loneliest you will ever feel is when someone is lying inches away from you, breathing softly in the dark, and you realize you've never felt more unseen. Let me tell you how I learned that. My husband, Thomas, died when I was 59. Pancreatic cancer, aggressive, cruel. We had 5 months between the day the doctor said the word terminal and the afternoon I held his hand in a hospital room that smelled like antiseptic and quiet dread. Those months passed in a blur of appointments, medications, whispered reassurances we both knew were fragile. I remember watching him sleep and memorizing the lines of his face. I remember the way his hand felt in mine, lighter somehow, as if pieces of him were already drifting away. After he was gone, the house felt cavernous, not physically bigger, but hollow. Every room echoed. Sunday mornings were the hardest. We had a ritual. He would grind the coffee beans, insisting pre-ground coffee was an insult to civilization. I would make pancakes. We'd sit at the small kitchen table, reading different sections of the paper, occasionally passing an article across to each other without a word. After he died, I still made coffee for 2 weeks. I don't know why. Habit, maybe. Hope, maybe. The second mug would sit across from me, untouched, steam rising into empty air. The first year was survival. The second year was learning how to breathe again without asking permission from grief. I won't pretend it was graceful. There were nights I fell asleep in the living room because I couldn't face our bedroom alone. There were days I spoke out loud just to hear a human voice. But slowly, so slowly I barely noticed, I found a rhythm. I started volunteering at the community library on Mondays, shelving books, helping children find stories about dragons and space and brave little girls. On Thursdays, I joined a watercolor class at the senior center. I wasn't good, but I liked the way the paint bled into the paper, unpredictable and soft. I learned how to reset a tripped breaker. I learned how to call a plumber without apologizing for not knowing the right terminology. I learned that the trash still had to go out on Wednesdays, whether I felt like a widow or not. It wasn't the life I had imagined when Thomas and I talked about retirement. We had plans, road trips, a small camper, maybe even a dog. That life was gone, but the life I had was mine. Then the comment started. It began gently. My daughter Melissa stirring sugar into her coffee at my kitchen counter. "Mom, have you thought about meeting someone?" "I'm fine," I told her, and I meant it. "You're alone all the time." "I'm not alone," I said. "I just live alone." She didn't understand the difference. To her, solitude and loneliness were the same thing. My friends joined in. At my watercolor class, a woman named Denise leaned toward me one afternoon and whispered, "You're still young, Margaret. You can't just give up." I was 64, too young, apparently, to choose peace. After a while, their concerns started to burrow into me. Late at night, I would lie in bed and wonder if they were right. Was I hiding? Was I shrinking my world out of fear? Was I mistaking safety for contentment? Maybe I owed it to myself to try again. That's how it always begins, not with longing, but with doubt. Denise had a neighbor. His name was Alan, 70, recently widowed. A gentle soul, she said, very respectable. Before I could overthink it, I agreed to let her give him my number. He called 2 evenings later. His voice was warm, steady. We talked about books first, then about the strange silence that follows loss. He understood certain things without explanation, and that felt comforting. After 3 weeks of phone conversations, we met for dinner at a quiet Italian restaurant halfway between our neighborhoods. He held the door open for me, asked thoughtful questions, told me about his grown son in Colorado, about the vegetable garden he kept in his backyard. There was an ease to him. Driving home that night, I caught myself thinking, maybe this is what moving forward looks like. The first few months were pleasant. We met twice a week, early dinners, short walks around his neighborhood when the weather was kind to my knees. He would call in the mornings to say good day. At first, I found it sweet, a sign that someone was thinking of me. But sweetness can sour quietly. The morning calls became morning and afternoon calls, then evening check-ins. If I didn't answer, my phone would light up again. Just making sure you're okay. I was in the garden, I'd explain. You didn't hear it ring? There was no accusation in his tone, not at first, just concern. But concern can carry its own weight. One Tuesday, I was at the library helping a little boy find a book about trains. My phone buzzed 3 times in my purse. I ignored it. When I returned his call 2 hours later, he sounded tight. I didn't know where you were. I told you I volunteer on Tuesdays. But what if something had happened? I apologized. I'm not sure what for. For living my life, maybe. That was the first time I felt it. That subtle shift. The sense that my independence was no longer a charming trait, but an inconvenience. Weekends changed too. Every Saturday, he had a plan. A hardware store visit, lunch with his sister, a drive to look at open houses we had no intention of buying. If I said I wanted a quiet day at home, he would fall silent. I just thought couples spend weekends together, he'd say. And there it was, that word, couples. At 64, when someone chooses you, the world expects you to be grateful, as if you've been rescued from obscurity, as if companionship is a prize you should clutch tightly, no matter the cost. So I started saying yes when I wanted to say no, yes to dinners when I was tired, yes to outings when my body ached, yes to conversations that stretched past my natural limits. About 5 months in, I noticed something unsettling. Every time his name appeared on my phone, my shoulders lifted toward my ears, my stomach tightened. It wasn't excitement, it was anticipation. Of what? I couldn't quite name. One night, he called at 10:30. I was already in bed reading. I let it ring twice before answering. He wanted to talk about a disagreement he'd had with his son, about the way the plumber overcharged him, about the ache in his lower back. We talked for an hour and 20 minutes. When I hung up, the house was silent again, but it didn't feel peaceful. I felt drained in a way that sleep couldn't fix. The breaking point came 8 months after our first dinner. We were sitting at his kitchen table. He had made roast chicken. The radio hummed softly in the background. I've been thinking, he said, setting down his fork. We spend most of our time together anyway. Why don't we make it official? You could move in here, or I could sell this place and come to yours." The room seemed to tilt. He kept talking about practicality, about finances, about waking up side by side every morning. I wasn't hearing the words. I was seeing my home, the porch where I drink my coffee in silence, the chair by the window where I read, the drawer in my kitchen where Thomas's old pocket knife still rests. I imagined explaining why I needed an afternoon alone, negotiating when to go to bed, justifying why I didn't want the television on, and I felt something close to panic. I ended it a week later. He was stunned, then hurt, then angry. "You're afraid," he said. "You're going to regret pushing everyone away." Maybe I was afraid, but not of being alone. I was afraid of disappearing. The first month after we broke up was heavy with guilt. Melissa was disappointed. "He was good to you, Mom." "I know. You're not going to find better at this age." That phrase again, at this age. But then something unexpected happened. One Saturday morning, I woke up and lay in bed for a moment, listening to the quiet. No plans, no expectations, no one waiting for a response. The thought came gently, what do I want to do today? Not what should I do, not what does someone else need. What do I want? I drove to the farmer's market alone, bought fresh peaches, came home and read for 3 hours without interruption. That night I went to bed at 9 because I was tired, and no one questioned it. And I realized something important. There is a profound difference between being alone and being lonely. With Alan, I was rarely alone. But I felt lonely in the ways that matter. I felt unseen when I needed rest. I felt guilty for wanting quiet. I felt like a supporting character in someone else's late life redemption story. Alone in my house, I feel whole. It has been 7 years since that relationship ended. I have not dated since, not because I'm bitter, not because I believe love is foolish, but because I understand myself now. I entered that relationship out of fear of judgment, fear of aging alone, fear of being perceived as incomplete. Now, at 71, my mornings begin at 7. I brew my coffee exactly the way I like it. Strong, no sugar. I sit on my porch and watch the light stretch across the yard. Some days I garden, some days I do absolutely nothing, and I don't explain myself to anyone. Melissa has softened. Last autumn, as we washed dishes after dinner, she looked at me carefully. "You seem lighter, Mom." "I am," I said. "Peace is not dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. It settles quietly into your bones." "Do I feel lonely sometimes?" "Of course. Holidays can echo. There are evenings when I see couples my age walking hand in hand, and a small ache passes through me, but it passes. It is nothing compared to the deep loneliness of feeling unseen while sitting beside someone who is supposed to know you. If you are in a relationship that exhausts you, you are allowed to leave. At 60, at 70, at 80. And if you are alone, and the world insists that something is missing, you are allowed to disagree. At this stage of life, peace is not indulgent. It is essential. I am 71. I live alone, and I am not waiting to be rescued from my own contentment. That isn't sadness. It's clarity. So ask yourself, are you truly lonely, or are you just afraid of being alone? There is a difference, and once you understand it, you may find that your own company is more than enough. End.